Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lab, I'm going to run through how to use the AWS API Gateway service to create a REST API. And then we'll look at connecting to this REST API and sending HTTP requests to it from our desktop computer. From the Services menu, we go to Application Services and API Gateway. If we haven't already created an API, we're going to be presented with a welcome screen. So we just click on Get Started. And a message comes up saying that there's already an example API we can use to get started. And that's what we'll do. So there's our example API. And there's the Swagger definition as well if we want to have a look at that for that example API. We're just going to import that. Okay, and we can see there it has created that API for us. So we are currently in the resources section of our API, and we can see here we've got a number of methods that have been defined for how our API responds to different types of requests. So what we've got set up here is how it responds to GET requests to the root endpoint, and also how it responds to pets. Additional to that, and also pets followed by a pet ID. So if we want to get the feedback or the data concerning a pet, an individual pet with a pet ID, we can put that out there as a GET request, and it will be returned with that information if it's available. Now, before we can actually use this, we need to deploy it. So what we do is we go to Actions, and then we go to Deploy API, and that will create a stage. So our deployment stage will be a new stage, and we're just going to call it Demo. That will be fine. We're not going to worry about having a description and a deployment description, but in a production environment, you would definitely put that in, but it's not necessary. So now we have very quickly deployed our API, and what we have here is an invoke URL. And so that is the root of our API endpoint. So we can click on that and it will give us a response. And it's given us a response in the form of some HTML there. So we're not going to be using the console to send our HTTP request. We're going to be using it from our desktop side using an application. But just to get started, we can use this Get or this Postman application. Just go to getpostman.com and download that. It's available for Mac, Windows, and Linux. And then we can use that to test our API and send requests and see what comes back. Okay, so once you've downloaded and installed Postman and you've got it up and running, you'll be presented with a screen similar to this. So what I'm going to do is just give you a quick idea of how to use it. So we've got here the different types of HTTP requests we can send to our API. We've got GET, POST, PUT, DELETE. We put in our URL for our endpoint, and then we click on Send. And then what will come back will be the response from that. So I'm going to start off with our deployed stage and the invoke URL for that. So I'm just going to copy that URL and then paste that in here. Now, just looking here, we've got no auth, so this doesn't require any authorization for a GET. You're just getting information, so we haven't set up authentication for that. But there are a number of options that we can do, and one of them is AWS Signature. And although that's a pretty cool thing that they've put that in there, never, ever use it. And there's a reason why, because you never, ever want to write code that contains your access key and your secret access key, because that is just plain stupid. So please don't do it, and you'll be exposing yourself big time to access to your AWS account. So the best way to do it is that if you want authentication for your API, use an IAM role, the same as you would with any website. So use an IAM role and verify or authenticate your end user using Facebook or Google or Microsoft Active Directory or whatever you want to use. So that is the way that you would do it. You would never put in your access key and your secret access key in code, especially if it's going on the client side. So you've been warned about that. and we'll go back to no auth, and we're going to put in our endpoint, and we're going to click on send. So what is returned from a GET request to the root of that endpoint is that HTML web page, that introduction to the API. And that's what we would expect. Now, there is also, if we have a look in the methods, so if we go back to resources, or you actually see it from here, I believe. So we've actually got a GET for pets we can use. So let's go and do a GET request on pets. So we'll just put pets on the end here, and we'll send that and see what comes back. And so what gets returned from that method is a list of all the pets, and they come back as a JSON object. It's an array of pet objects here, which have an ID, a type, and a price. And we've got three pets there. We've got dog, cat, and fish. We can also, there is another method there, which is a get, which followed by the pet ID. And we can also use that one. So if we put a pet ID of, say, 3, it should come back as a fish. So put in 3, and we click send. And there you go. So we've got the object for ID number 3, which is type fish, and a price of 99. So everything seems to be working fine from this end. And now what we can do is we can look at writing an application, a real application in JavaScript that can do this and access all this information programmatically. And we'll do that in the next lab.